Okay, welcome to the last video where we go over the finalists of ships that are going to be included in my next custom campaign. We're going to go over the Gladiator MRL, the Nimrod, the Nomad, the Sarma, the Slugger, and the Variag in this video, saving of course the best to last. Couple of quick notes. This will be the last video that I'm going to release on this channel before the launch of the campaign. If I do any shipbuilding to prepare and release it, it's going to be on my second channel, which is at First 2. You'll see a link to it in the description of the video. Once you have watched the video, go down to the description of the video and there'll be a link to the Google form where you can vote on your favorite ships to be included in the campaign, bearing in mind that the AI is going to use them against me. They're not for me to use. And finally, for those of you that did spot the Easter egg in the last episode, I have indeed spoken to the voice actor who played Prez in Project Wingman, and she's very kindly recorded some lines for me to replace into the game. I'm still confirming licensing on whether or not I can release the voice pack. If I can, it will be included when the campaign goes live. Without further ado, let's jump in and have a look at these finalists. Also, thank you very much for everybody who voted on the Nimrods over the weekend. That's really helped me out. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time and effort. Okay, starting with the Gladiator MRL. Here is the ship, just to remind you what it looks like. It comes with two A22 MRLs, giving it quite a lot of firepower if it can hit with it. It also has two Zeniths, and it's equipped with flares, and there is some Palash in here somewhere as well, I'm pretty sure. It's a very powerful ship, but the game tends to use it more than the Gladiator, and the Gladiator is the scarier version. The problem with using the A220 MRLs, of course, is the ammo requirement on these at 4, which means a lot of the space is used up with big ammo packs. So that's the default version of it. Bear in mind that it has 250 kilometers per hour top speed, thrust to rate ratio 2.8. It's a good ship. Let's see what the community have come up with. First things first, we have the Burrito from Ensign Foil, a design that should look familiar as a few of Ensign Foil's other ships have come through, and they do always seem to include this kind of sticking out area, and I do enjoy the use of a blade of crew quarters here as an armor, as a module that can be destroyed. The ship mounts 3 A22 MRLs, which is a significant upgun. That is an insane amount of firepower if these shots hit. As we all know, the rockets do miss, and I'll show you in a second how I'm bad with that. There are no static thrusters on this design. It is all using D30 engines, giving a lot of lateral movement. The thrust to rate ratio is nowhere near as high, and the top speed is reduced by 100 kilometers per hour, but it's going to be a lot tankier in terms of its design. I do not think there's any Palash. We're going to have to put in a whole part on here to check that. I'll do that really quickly. There is no Palash in the design, but it is still a very chunky ship. Let's see how it does in a quick test battle. Okay, here's Ensign Foil's Burrito in a quick test fight. One thing I want to really check out is the speed. It is, again, like the other ship that Ensign Foil put in, quite good at building up velocity, but not great at cancelling it. The spread of the rockets is a little bit problematic. I'm not very good at hitting with these. I can see this being very scary if you manage to get it behind or below another ship in combat, bearing in mind that I'm going to be using cruisers. The rockets are very good at dealing with those, but trying to hit anything with these, look at them tumble, is not great. That one might actually hit even though it's tumbling. I'd like to at least get one barrage to hit here. That's going to hit. That was nasty. That's a lot of damage. It's probably better to just burst fire these rather than hold down the fire button. That was a good hit as well. Yeah, I'm getting the feel of this a little bit better now. The aiming indicator is actually quite frustrating. It doesn't work with the way my brain wants the missiles to fly. It's not a terrible ship at all. That missile caused... Okay, that was a big ammo explosion. There's maybe your weakness on the ship. But there's a good little quick check on how this ship works. Let's move on to the next one. The next Gladiator MRL finalist is the Smirt by Mr. Nathan 101, and if you thought the Burrito had a lot of firepower, this ship mounts 4 A220s. Now there's some sacrifices have had to be made to make this work. The ship has less armor. I'm going to say even less armor. The Burrito has a lot of armor. Has less armor than the Burrito, and it's having to mount 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 AZ-182 ammo components, making it extremely explosive. This ship is a powder keg. But the damage on target, the game has rated this at a 32 firepower. A full barrage from these missile launchers could cause a catastrophic amount of damage if the ship gets away with it. There is no Zeniths or anything like that. Doesn't mount any Palash. We'll find out. It does mount Palash, so it's got Palash coverage on the bottom to try and protect this unarmored lower area. It's also very lacking in engines. We only have 2 D30s and 2 static D30Ss. That's it. There's nothing else here to give it maneuverability. It's going to be slow, it's going to take damage, but what it will do is pump out the damage. Okay, jumping into a quick test battle here with Mr. Nathan 101 Smirt. What I'm worried about is even though it has a lot of firepower, it's going to be very slow, and I think if it starts taking damage, it's going to die really quickly. We'll use this cruiser here as our test subject to fire at, if we can hit with it. The rate of fire is actually pretty good once the guns get reloading. We're on fire straight away. That's going to be a big problem for us. And that was an ammo explosion pretty much instantaneously. So that is a potential design issue with the ship. I did point out how much ammo it has to have. It just got completely clowned, unfortunately, by a penetrating shot. That doesn't mean the ship is bad, it just means that it is vulnerable to ammo explosions. I apologize, Mr. Nathan, for not giving your ship a better show. But that is the Smirt by Mr. Nathan 101. Think of it in terms of being in a garrison. It's not going to ever fight me on its own, it's going to be in with other ships. And the Gladiator MRL is a common ship for the AI to use, so will it be able to do the damage it needs to do before I have time to focus fire on it? That's the question. And as always, we can't have someone trying to put an aircraft carrier into a role where it wasn't originally designed. And this is actually some interesting thinking. If you consider what I've been saying in the other submissions, the Gladiator MRL is a very common ship for the AI to throw into a garrison. So putting something like this into that role isn't actually that bad an idea. This thing has a thruster rate ratio of 3.2 and a top speed of 286 km per hour, so it's actually quite fast. It has 2 AK-100s, making it able to contribute to a fight quite nicely, and mounts 4 T-7s, which are the long-range supersonic fighter interceptors. In terms of other armaments, it does have 4 Palash, giving it a decent amount of protection, and it is well armored as well. It is a pretty good little in the middle of the road carrier / interceptor, where it'll be able to launch those fighters as I come into the city and then actually help out the garrison a little bit with those AK-100s when the fight is joined. I'm not going to take it into a test battle because I don't think it's really fair with the aircraft mount on it. It's not designed to be used in that role. One thing to also note is it has 2 Zeniths as well. I actually really like the placement of those Zeniths underneath the landing bay, and all these dangerous components using the shielding of the flight deck to keep them safe is a really nice idea. I also like these little blisters for the escape pods. That's cool. So this is The Tomb by Orange Elephant. Just a different take on the Gladiator MRL. Here we have Sloane's Gusto MRL, another member of Crabfleet, a ship that I really enjoy the aesthetics of. The way they've built the ship makes it look like it has a head component here, it's got mandibles here, these are its feet, or these are maybe its feeding arms. It's also very interestingly constructed. We have a layered armor system here where the zeniths are on the outside of the ship behind an inner armor component, like the armored shell of a crab. We have a lot of armor around the outside that is both effective and aesthetic, and then we've got an outer layer of ablative sort of outer fur, I would say, that you get on like a snow crab, which I also like the look of. Even the antenna pushed that idea of crabness to me quite strongly. In terms of armament, we have 2 AK-100s, we have 1 A220 MRL, so it's come in a little bit lower in terms of firepower, but I think that's made up for the fact that it has a thruster rate ratio of 2.7, it has a top speed of 246 km per hour, making it a lot more maneuverable and able to get around the battlefield. The 4 Zeniths are a nice upgun as well. I don't think there's any Palash in this design. There's 2 Palash down by the mandibles down here, so it also has Palash protection. So this is more of a lower firepower, faster, higher speed, also well armored version of the ship. One thing I'm also very aware of here is that the fuel and the ammo are pretty well protected inside the ship, and they're more distributed because we're using some of the smaller ammo packs that may prevent it from those big firecracker explosions that we've seen in the other ships. Let's see how it does in combat. Alright, bringing the Gusto MRL into a fight here, let's see how it does. This is again the Slumzing submission. I got confused as to which ship I was there. I'm going to launch a couple of Zeniths here. It's made the missile launcher the secondary weapon here, which is interesting. Definitely a lot more maneuverable than the other ones we think. Trying to aim the AK-100s and the missiles is quite hard. Sorry if there's a weird noise in the background, the dog just decided to bump into the table. In terms of flying, the ship is a lot more fun to... No, I wouldn't say fun, that's not the wrong description to use. It's a lot more agile. It feels a lot better in the air than the other ships I've reviewed so far for the Gladiator MRL. The missile launcher, I think, is a really nice addition, actually, once you get your head around how it works. And you can see that I'm able to dodge the incoming missiles quite handily here. And we're just bullying the ship quite nicely. Taken very little damage so far. I'm actually really enjoying this. We're going to take a big hit here, but the ablative armor is working really well on the top. Getting into position and then launching the missiles with a higher speed is definitely a much easier way of doing it. This might actually be a ship design that I could steal because this feels very, very powerful. That's what I'm going to do with the Gusto MRL there. A really nice showing from it. Look how little damage it's actually taken in the long run. A great ship from Sloane's. Let's see how it does in the voting. Okay, the next Gladiator MRL finalist is the Vanguard from Krilidic, and they've gone for a very different design philosophy here. They've replaced the Gladiator MRL with a more dedicated brawler, with a really interesting, elongated, sort of lozenge-shaped design. You don't see a lot of ships that are built in this direction that are sort of wide and thin. What we have here for primary armament is 2 D-18 bullets, which is a really good armament. We have a 2 A-37 for anti-missile roll, we've got 2 Palash pointing straight down to protect the underneath of the ship, and we have 4 Zeniths here in the hull as well. Kind of a very mixed bag of weapons, definitely a major departure from the I wanted to call it the Burrito, I mean the Gladiator MRL's main design philosophy. That doesn't mean it's a bad ship, it's just different. Things to bear in mind, 201 kilometers per hour, 2.2 thrust to weight ratio, so it should be pretty nippy in combat. Very standard armament means it should be very easy for me and the AI to use. Do you want to see this ship in battle? Do you want it to be a ubiquitous ship in the campaign? Couple of design features I really like here. The armored missile bays here are very, very nice, and the inclusion of a second armor plate behind them means that this whole module section can be blown off and the ship will remain combat effective. And we also have 2 D30Ss here protected by the Palash, which is pretty nice to see. It gives the ship some stability in the air, and we've got armor plates here, so we're not just 100% relying on the Palash to get this through. Obviously designed as a top fighter, they've tried to up armor the top as much as possible with some fuel tanks behind the armor, which is always a little bit concerning to see because that's what catches fire soon. But they have thought about that and they have put some FSS behind those fuel tanks. However, we only have 2 of those in the chassis. So that is the Vanguard from Clinic. Let's see how it does in combat. Okay, let's see how it does in combat here. I think angling those Palash might have made for a little bit of more of coverage for the Palash, but maybe they wanted to keep it very tight on the bottom. As we know, D80 Monoliths are a great gun. This is doing pretty well. It's not as maneuverable as the ship we just got to fly around in, but I mean, that says it all. We know the D80 is a good gun. What we've got here is a little bit of a problem correcting our speed, just changing our direction a little bit. I'm not going to keep playing with this for much longer. We've killed the ship very, very quickly. I feel that if this is going to lose any points with the community, it's that it isn't using an A220. That's kind of going to be the main thing that's maybe going to put people off it. But we'll see. It is looking to be a very good ship. It's doing a very good job here. It's like a very nasty version of the Sarma. That's what it's making me think of here. Anyway, that's enough for that. I don't want to spend too long playing it. Let's jump into the next ship. Here we have the Sweet Cake from 2Z2, who has managed to achieve what looks to me to be a pocket cruiser in what I would say is like a destroyer role with their ship, their Gladiator replacement. They've kind of kept the concept of MRL, but instead of using an A220 or Zeniths, they've actually fit the ship with 6 sprints, providing a very strong anti-missile component to a garrison if it's allowed into it. And in order to control those sprints, it has an MR12 FCR, which of course allows 2 sprints to be fired at once, and gives it a 400 kilometer range radar to give the garrison a little bit more of a detection. Using 2 RD-59s gives it a powerful thrust, but obviously it is a very heavy ship. So we're looking at a speed of 128 kilometers per hour, thrust to weight ratio of 1.4. It has 2 Mark II 180 Sarmats, so that's 4 barrels of 180 millimeter cannons, which is a lot of firepower. It's actually pretty well armored here with a nice armored shell around the outside. We've got reinforced structure behind the sprint so that even though they're open, they're going to resist for a while. The ammo and fuel is pretty well protected in the core of the ship, with most of its capacity taken up by these large engines. So that is the Sweet Cake by 2Z2, a very different design if you want to see something a bit different, or you like the idea of there being a lot of anti-missile support in garrisons, this might be one to vote for. Okay, trying out this ship in combat, we need to be ready, remember, to launch our sprint so we get the chance. Yeah, that's nice. That is a nice anti-missile defense that this ship has. Looks like it can take a bit of a hit as well. One problem with the 180 is the rate of fire is low on it, but it does make up for it with the amount of damage it does when it does hit. Looks like a pretty good weapons platform, actually. We'll watch out for that overheat and not fire into the 57mm, which will shoot down our shots. Yeah, you can see this is a sturdy, well-designed ship. It's whether you like the idea of this kind of pocket cruiser, which is actually performing better than I expected it to, being in combat. One thing that will happen though is that eventually that, it's happened here, that the anti-missile radar has been destroyed and now the sprints are useless, but that got most of them off before that happened. That's the Sweet Cake from 2Z2. And our last Gladiator MRL replacement is the Shatterer from House Lefay. Do not underestimate this ship. It has 14 Zeniths, which is absolutely ludicrous, causing a huge threat in the air. It has a top speed of 310 kilometers per hour and a thrust to weight ratio of 3.4, meaning that once it has fired off all of these Zeniths, it still is a threat as a mini Lightning with the 4 AK-100s that it is mounting. Also has tons of range because it's using the large TC-400 fuel tank. We do have some overlap issues, obviously, but it can still fire in every direction, and what you can do is basically spiral around your enemies, letting the AK-100 that is blocked reload reload while you're moving, and almost keep up a constant rate of fire while you rotate. Not significantly armored, but still will be able to take a couple of hits. There are quite often Palash hidden on these builds, so I'm just going to quickly check and see if there is one. No. What you can see there, though, from me trying to place the Palash is there's not a wasted space in this design at all. Let's see how it does in combat, but this is the Shatterer from House Lefay. Now, I feel the fighting style of this ship is to move fast and launch Zeniths, so that's what I'm going to try and focus on. Just not fly into my Zeniths, which I almost did there, and also just dodge shots. Took a couple of hits there, unfortunately. Just trying to launch as many Zeniths as I can and track everything. It's actually insanely difficult to do. We took a lot of hits there. We got one kill. We're out of Zeniths now. A lot of them got destroyed by incoming Palash fire, unfortunately. Not Palash fire, Prox Fuse fire. The ship is slowly degenerating, but it's done its job. It's delivered its missiles. And the thing is, the AI is maybe going to do a better job of avoiding everything than I did. It's actually a very scary ship. I'm sad it's underperformed here. I think it's a lot scarier than it maybe has appeared. But you can see we're still quite combat effective, despite having lost quite a lot of ourselves. And that's where I'm going to leave it for the Shatterer. You got a basic idea of it. It wasn't the greatest showing, but I haven't shown every ship perfectly either. So that's all of our Gladiator MRLs. Let's move on to the next ship. Alright, next we're going to go through the Nimrod. The Nimrod is a ship that isn't super common. It shows up in some garrisons, and I think it shows up escorting some strike groups as well. It comes with a Mark 180 Sarmat, so it does bring 2 double-barreled 180mm cannons to a garrison fight. It also has 2 Zeniths. It kind of follows the same design philosophy as the Paladin in terms of its shape and size, and it does have quite a lot of armor to it. 226 kilometers per hour, 2.5 thrust ratio. It's a pretty decent ship. It just doesn't show up that often. I'm going to go through the finalists for this class pretty quickly. So our first one here is the Tango from Corazon Ray, a weird ship that's fitting a lot of different roles. It has 2 sprints, so it has 3 sprints and an FCS to fire those sprints, 2 LA-29 strike craft. It has 2 D-80 monots, giving it decent firepower, top speed of 162 kilometers per hour, thrust ratio of 1.8, so it's not particularly maneuverable. It's one of those ships that's fitting into a strange role in a garrison where it's going to try and annoy me with those ships on the way in, fire those sprints while I'm engaging, do as much damage as it can with those monots, and probably die pretty quickly when it gets focused fired, but it's filling a lot of different roles, which is what the Nimrod didn't really do before. There's definitely some issues here with some exposed hull. We've got another blade of crew quarters here, and then there's a few holes in the hull that I'll be able to get through pretty quickly. It's whether or not it can deliver its annoyance in the strategic level before I actually get into a fight with it. Okay. Our next Nimrod is the Nimrod 1 from Kipco. Filling a very similar role, this is a strategic annoyance ship more than a tactical ship. We come with 2 A100 missiles, our MR500 radar, and an MR2M FCR tracking radar to attempt to get these missiles to hit perfectly when they're in range. We have 6 sprints on this ship, so it can do a little bit of annoyance when we get into a garrison fight, pretty well armored, and we also have 1 37mm cannon to deal with any incoming Zeniths that may be fired at the ship or nearby allies. That's the whole ship. It is designed to annoy me on the strategic level. If that's what you want the Nimrods to be doing when they show up, this might be a good choice for you to vote for. That's the Nimrod 1 from Kipco. Next, we have the Bloodhound from Sifrin, which actually drew with the Tango in its voting bracket, so I've included both of them in the vote. Very much named aptly for its role. With the massive MR700 radar, it has a 750 kilometer radar range in a very, very small, cheap package. We also have an FCR here, so it can use its 6 sprints in combat, and it mounts the 2A37 for an anti-missile support role as well. If you want garrisons to occasionally have this massive radar detection radius, could be a good one to vote for. It has absolutely very low tactical capabilities, but very strong on the strategic level, which is what people seem to be wanting to attack me most on for this playthrough. Okay, our next Nimrod finalist is the Wisp from Strawman. I'm definitely seeing a theme with the winners of the vote here. We have another strategic ship with 2 KH-15 missiles. It has 4 sprints. It mounts the bigger MR-12 FCR, which allows for 2 sprints to be fired at once. Interestingly, this one actually has a tactical component to it with 2 AK-100s and a decent amount of armor around the ship. And I'm liking the double layered armor here around this fuel tank. I think that's pretty cool to see. But in general, the other thing that I like about it is it does kind of fit the silhouette of the Nimrod a little bit closer than the other submissions, but what we really have is another strategic option with a little bit more of a tactical edge to it than the other submissions we've seen so far. Next we have the Jester from Silent Snack, which is certainly a ship. It has a very, very long range, and it mounts 3 LA-29 strike craft. It has a IRS-1 Mars to detect me without needing radar, and 1 AK-725 Vimpel as an attack weapon. It also has an MP-21 Eland, so it has a radar range of 577, it has an IRST range of 300 kilometers and an Eland range of 577 kilometers, and it has 3 planes. That's really all it's got going for it. The name Jester makes me think that maybe they submitted it, not really expecting it to get very far, but it has done pretty far getting through to the Nimrod finalists. So if you want more planes and garrisons, here is your vote. Okay, moving on to some very big ships now. This is the Nomad from the vanilla game. The Nomad is a pretty good cruiser. It has the same kind of feature creep problems that the vanilla Sevastopol has, with lots of problems with shot blocking for its main guns. It has a lot of palash, it has sprints, it has radar. It's designed as a command cruiser, and not really a battleship, though it can take that role. I've let people a little bit off the chain with the Nomad. They've got a little bit more money to play with, if I remember right. There's some very interesting finalist designs. So there's the Nomad to remind you what it looks like. Let's jump into the votes and see what we have available to us here. And our first finalist for the Nomad is the Donut from TREM. I think TREM has pretty much made it through to every finalist round so far, so congratulations to them. This ship is a monstrosity. They've gotten over the problem of elevation by making the ship so big that the guns are not blocked at all by the fact that it's just a large open ring. Also using normal fuel tanks in the center of the ship instead of large fuel tanks, so there's literally no shot blocking at all. It's a little bit insane, but it's obviously worked. We have a top speed of 100 kilometers per hour, thrust rate ratio of 1.3, but a firepower of 48. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 12, 16 D80 bullets, and 4, 8, we've got what, 12 37 millimeters as well. All of these can fire in every direction without being blocked. The ship also has a radar range of 400 kilometers because it is mounting an MR-12, and it has Eland of 1050 kilometers because it has 2 of these. It also mounts lots of sprints. I think there's what, 4, 8, 12, 16 sprints on this ship, and I believe there may be Palash hidden away as well. We'll just check for that. It may not have Palash. It can't have everything. It has two Palash as well. So that is the Donut from TREM, a thing of beauty. Possibly conceived by an insane genius. Let's see how it does in combat. So here we go with the Donut combat. You can see how massive it is. That's 1 barrage from it. I missed with most of it, but I don't think much will actually stand up to a full barrage from it. Can you imagine this with prox fuse ammo? I mean, it would eat the prox fuse ammo very quickly. It's not going to move very quickly, I'll tell you that much. This Archangel's almost dead. That's it down. And the Donut is pretty much uninjured at this point. I don't think any sprint, any Zenith is going to get through this Sea-Whiz fire. That was a full magazine fired into the bottom of that Negev, and it's pretty much wiped it out. And that's it gone now. We've got a Nomad over here. It's pretty fun to fly this thing. I've got to watch out for ships landing on top of me though. I didn't really need to take a hit from that Zenith there. That was bad play for me. This Nomad is listing it's lost its engines, I think. Yeah, I think that's what we need to see from the Donut. It is terrifying. The one thing to bear in mind of is if you vote for this ship and I get it in the campaign, remember I get a free Nomad before the end of the campaign. So you will be giving me one of these for free if that's what you vote for. Our next Nomad is the Bedouin from Cygnus Systems. They've gone for a more traditional looking cruiser style fitting into the aesthetics of Highfleet. We have a lot of components on this ship. It comes with a complement of 7 T7 multi-purpose interceptor fighters, giving it a lot of long-range punch. We have the full MR700 radar suite. The various ELINT, FCRs, and IRS systems on the ship give it the full, almost full, I think, coverage of sensor systems you can put on a ship. 750 kilometer radar range, 125 kilometer tracking range. It can launch 1 sprint at a time, 1050 kilometer ELINT range, and a 300 kilometer IRST range. It's a very beautifully built ship. We've got lovely things like double layered armor. We've got underneath the flight deck, which counts as armor, another layer of armor to protect the large fuel tanks. The FSS placement, if you look at it throughout the ship, is very cleverly done, making sure there's very good coverage with FSS across the ship. We have 8 sprints available to fire here as well. They are downward facing, so if we ever catch the ship landed on a garrison, there is a chance it'll blow itself up. And we also have Palash throughout the ship as well. All in all, it's a very good ship. The one thing it can't do particularly well is Brawl. We only have 4 D-AT Monarchs and 2 A-37s. This is designed as a long-range strategic option. For that reason, I'm not going to do a test battle with it because it's not going to last very long against the likes of a real Nomad or a Varyag. And we also have missile bays here for 4 KH-15 missiles. A very, very good command cruiser, not great at brawling, but if you want that strategic element of a strike group to be more of a threat, this is your option over the Donut. Our next Nomad replacement is the HSC-38E4 Vector from Golden Floof. Golden Floof ships are thin and tall because of the landing bays in the area, but I want to just give you a zoomed in overview so you can see how heavily armed this ship is. It mounts a lot of AK-100s. It has a top-mounted A-100 and KH-15P, sprints and FSS and sensors up here. These are obviously going to get blown off pretty quickly, but they're designed to help them find the enemy. In terms of the actual chassis, it's hard to get on screen. There's so much going on here, but we have something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 16, 17 AK-100s and 1, 2, 3, not quite as many D-80s, maybe 3 or 4 D-80s and Vimples on the ship as well. It obviously presents a very large target to the enemies, but it is extremely heavily armored throughout. You can see we've got a layer of armor for the entire coverage of the ship. It is something else for sure. I'm sorry the camera's flying all over the place. It doesn't like me zooming out this much. I believe there's Palash on this ship as well. Oops, I didn't put that in properly. Yes, there's Palash in the... Oh, I can't even zoom out enough to show you the Palash. There's 4 Palash in the middle of the chassis as well. So that is the HSC-3084 Vector by Golden Floof, a flagship for sure. I would not like to try and land this in the campaign. I think I would mess it up really, really badly. Slowest ship so far, I think at 99 kilometers per hour, but let's see how it does in combat. Okay, you can see how massive this ship is with its single... the middle engines for lateral thrust are hilarious. I'm going to try and fire this Archangel once I've got a firing solution. That's a single barrage. I missed massively, but you can see how much fire there is on this ship. I'm struggling to keep it in the air. I'm having to thrust upwards constantly. It's not taking a lot of damage from the amount of firepower that's coming in on it, although the Palash has just gone down. I should shoot that down just in time. If it gets... You do not want to fly directly below this ship, above the ship, because then it can fire with both sides of its AK-100s. Definitely a sturdy ship. The AK-100s give it a decent rate of fire. That's probably all I'm going to show from it from right now, but you can see that it's going to last for a long time in combat. So that is the HSC-384 Vector from Golden Floof. Next up, we have Mr. Nathan's Uragan as a Nomad replacement. This ship mounts a massive sensor package, similar to the others. We've got a 750 kilometer radar range, 325 kilometer tracking range with a guidance level of 3, so we can launch 3 sprints at once. We have an ELINT range of 1,500 kilometers and an IRST range of 300 kilometers. The ship mounts KH-15s, KH-15Ps, and R3 missiles. It also, I don't know if you've noticed this yet, has 4 A220s on the stern and the bow of the ship, giving it a pretty devastating frontal and rear barrage with those weapons. You don't want to get above or below the ship either. In terms of blockage, these actually have no blockage, even though there's fuel tanks in the middle of the ship. Because the ship is so wide, it can fire with all 8 of these rocket launchers at once. The Vimples do have some blockage on them, but they're not as important for this role. I don't think we have any sprints on the ship despite the guidance, which for me... Oh no, we do have sprints. There's 6 sprints mounted in the back of the ship here. And in terms of Palash, don't think we have anything. And yes, the dog is sleeping if you heard her snoring. No, there's no Palash on the ship. So it's relying on its armor. They've layered the armor below the missile base, which is nice to see. There's a little hole in the armor here. I'm not sure why. Maybe for the FSS. FSS placement is also very sensible and nice to see. I do like to look at FSS placement in larger ships. They've used as much reinforced hull as they can, probably to save on costs on armor. One thing that I find quite funny about this ship is it is actually slower than the Golden Floof Tower. At 98 kilometers per hour, it is 1 kilometer an hour slower. But you've got a full sensor package, you've got long-range tactical weapons, and I'm sure everybody is pretty keen to see what it looks like when it fires 8 rockets at once. So let's jump into a test battle with the Uragan by Mr. Nathan 101. Okay, I'm going to give it a second to load, and then we're going to open fire. This is the Uragan by Mr. Nathan 101. Not everything got through, but I think we just smashed that ship to pieces. Yep, we've taken off pretty much the rear of that Variac. That is a terrifying amount of firepower, honestly. I should be launching some missiles here, but I'm kind of just going to focus down on trying to kill this Variac if I can. I don't see how much longer it has to live. It's already tilting. One barrage is just a severe amount of fire. And probably it might have as the missiles might actually be killing themselves on the explosions. But we just had a, I think we had an ammo explosion there. This is a pretty nasty battleship. Anyway, that is the Uragan from Mr. Nathan 101, a very scary prospect. Just remember that if you do put one of these in the game, I will get one for free. Just keep that in mind, that might be a problem. Our next Nomad replacement is the Not Bury by Sir Osse. It's a very cute, compact little cruiser, much less wide than the others we've seen so far, with some really cool design features. We have as primary armament 2 squalls, which is the first time I've seen these on a Nomad submission. Unfortunately, they are blocked by the fuel tanks, but if you get this low enough, there is a decent amount of elevation on them. They'll be able to shoot at a target that's above the ship or on the horizon of the ship. We also have 2 T7s built in and a huge barrage of missiles, A100s, R3s, and KH-15s all along the hull here, with a little bit of armor and Palash to protect them. There is a little bit of heresy, I would say, here, because this A100 will launch even though there's Palash in front of it, because it is elevated above it. We have layered armor in here as well. I like the little armor hat for the ammo here. That's a nice touch once these crew quarters get ablated as well. We don't have quite as much of a sensor package as the other ships, but we still got a pretty good sensor package. We're looking at 500 kilometer radar, 325 tracking, 3 guidance for its large complement of sprints, 750 ELINT and 300 kilometer IRST. Top speed of 120 kilometers per hour puts it in the top speed bracket for our Nomad replacements. All in all, it's a cute and compact fighting ship. It definitely doesn't have the terrifying amount of firepower of the likes of the Donut or the last ship that we saw, but still a very well designed and cleverly built ship. I do really enjoy how much they've managed to fit into such a small packet. The Palash coverage, let me just check that again, 1 on each side, so it does have that extra layer of armor. We'll see how it does in combat. It's not going to perform as well as the others, I don't think, but it is still a very good ship. I honestly am quite glad that I'm not having to decide on which of these Nomads makes it into the campaign, because all of them are very, very good on their own merits, and I think it's going to be quite a hard vote for the Nomad. So really in combat, it's all about the marks, the Sarmas here. That's pretty devastating, actually. We could actually swap sides while the other gun reloads. Oh no, the gun's going to turn too slowly to do that. That's a shame. I'm trying to get low so I can fire both of them. I forgot how slowly this gun fires. I'm not firing sprints right now because I want to focus on hitting. But you can see now that we're below, both of the Sarmats are being able to hit this target. And this is a scary amount of firepower, actually. Now that we're below and able to fire with both of them, we're just punching through this Variac. You can imagine this with Prox Fuse or armor piercing ammo. Varyag is getting chunked here. I'm just looking at the bottom right hand corner to see how much damage we're doing. We're just getting through those fuel tanks very quickly. We're about to crack the ship in half. The noise is just overwhelming. Honestly, this is performing a lot better than I thought it was going to. And we're still in pretty good shape. We've lost a little bit at the top of the ship because we got into a duel with the Varyag, but not bad at all. So that's Sir Osse's replacement. Let's see what the last Nomad is. Our last Nomad is the Wayfarer from House Lefay. And I know that this ship is designed to be as survivable as possible in this patch. It is a double layered with a reinforced armor sandwiched between 2 thick layers of armor Nomad. We have the House Lefay signature weapon pods on the fore and after the ship, or the port and starboard of the ship, with 5 AK-100s in each of them. Because of their positioning, they are far enough out from the side of the ship that they are not blocked by the fuel tank, meaning that all 10 of these can fire on a target at the same time. We have 2 packs of 4 37mm for anti-missile defense. We also have a jammer on this ship, which is the first time we've seen a jammer on a ship that's been built for the AI. I'm not sure if the AI will use it, but it's a cool thing to see in here. We have 250 kilometers of radar range because of the tracking radars, 250 kilometers of tracking as well. We have a tracking level of 2, though I don't think there's any sprints in the ship to make use of that. We also have 1,500 kilometer of inland range and an IRST range of 300 kilometers. So it has a full sensor suite, just not quite the range for radar. Top speed of 108 kilometers per hour, actually putting it in the top end of our speeds. These buried RD-59s will actually keep it in the air for a long time once the outside gets ablated away. And this is honestly a ship that can take a supreme amount of punishment. It also has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 palash. So not only does it have a layer of armor, then a layer of reinforced hull, then a layer of armor, then another layer of reinforced hull, but it has 16 palash, providing as much protection on top of that as well, making this ship so difficult to kill. It may not have the insane firepower of some of the other Nomads that we've seen, although honestly, 10 AK-100s is a lot of firepower with a very high rate of fire, but this ship will not die. The only way to kill this ship really is to get underneath it with armor-piercing ammo and try and detonate that fuel that leads up to the main fuel tank. There's not a lot of FSS in the ship. If it had one weakness, it's that a fuel fire could do a lot of damage to it. But surviving long enough and doing enough damage to get through that armor to do a fuel fire will be very, very hard. Let's see how it does in combat. This is the Wayfarer from House Lefay. Definitely not the most maneuverable ship in the game. What we're going to do in a second is open fire. And as I said, all of those AK-100s can fire all the time, and you pretty much just hold down the trigger. So far the enemy haven't made it through the palace yet, and that's what I'm kind of waiting for, is how much firepower can we take, how much damage can we do before the enemy's infield, which is a Nomad and I think an Archangel, I can't see on the top of the screen, break through the palace layer to actually do some damage to this ship. Because at the moment they've done nothing. We've not taken any damage at all yet, and this Nomad is listing. And that's the Nomad dead. And we haven't taken a single bit of damage. We've got some damage on the sensors because they're exposed outside the armor, and there's been some burst through from incoming fire, but the palace still has not been damaged. And I think that says it all. I'm going to stop the combat here because I don't want to spend too long on one ship, but this is a pretty scary prospect. This is a very, very scary ship in terms of staying alive. So that's the Wayfarer from House Lefay. Okay, our next ship after the Nomad is the Sarma. I'm going to go through the Sarma submissions pretty quickly. We're not going to do test fights with them because this video is going to be long enough as it is, and we're going to see a lot of these in the campaign. The Sarma is pretty much the bulky ship that the game throws into a garrison to give you a little bit of trouble. It doesn't have a lot of firepower, but it lasts a long time. It's well designed in terms of armor, especially for lighter ships to deal with. 4 Zeniths, 3 AK-75 Wimples. It's got decent firepower, but just doesn't have the armor pen that it might need to do a lot of damage. 323 kilometers per hour and a thruster ratio of 3.6 are probably two important things to think about when we look at these finalists. That is the vanilla Sarma. Let's have a look at our submissions. So our first Sarma replacement is the Cerberus Mark I from Format. Very different design from the vanilla Sarma. We've got 3 AK-100s and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 sprints with an MR12 FCR giving it 2 sprints at a time support for dealing with incoming Zeniths. There's obviously a theme here with ship designs where a lot of people think I'm going to be using a lot of Zeniths in my campaign, when usually I forget to fire them, but it's maybe going to encourage me to use them because people think of them as a real threat. So we've had the Sarma turned into quite a decent anti-missile system and still be a little bit of a lightning with the 3 AK-100s, 256 km per hour top speed and 2.9 thrust to rate ratio. It's going to get around pretty quickly. The only downside here that I can really see is instead of armor, we're using reinforced hull, which means it isn't going to take a long time for sustained fire to take this ship out. But as terms of a garrison ship, it's going to be really frustrating and stop me from using any missiles until I've dealt with it. It's also going to be very good at dealing with incoming planes, which is something I haven't really thought about until now, but this is also a very good air defense ship for me using LA-29s to try and do bombing runs on garrisons, which is something that I do a lot. It is a very common tactic of mine. So that is the Cerberus from Format, anti-air, anti-missile ship. Next, we have the Matlab 2 ER from Hikura, a ship that looks like it should be slow and bulky, but if you actually look at the stats, it's faster and more maneuverable than the original Sarma, with a top speed of 342 kilometers per hour and a thrust to rate ratio of 3.8. This ship can actually move around pretty fast for the amount of armor that it's packing. The guns have been upgraded to 2 AK-100s and a 725 Vimple, giving it a lot more punch, but we've lost the Zeniths in terms of being able to do that. It's a neat little package. It's very compact. It's a pretty nice, almost love heart shaped ship that I think will cause some problems for a garrison. It doesn't have any external engines either, so even though the bottom there is open, it doesn't need to worry about losing thrust or taking fire from below. And honestly, if it keeps moving, it could put itself in a very good position. If you want a tough little brawler that can potentially outspeed a lot of the ships I'm bringing into the game and maybe last a little bit longer than it looks like it should, this might be the ship for you. This is the submission from Hikura. Our next entry is the Saturn from KR. Special mention for these big stumpy legs that it's got. Top speed of 180 kilometers per hour, thrust rate ratio of 2. We have 4 AK-100s, which are sadly have a little bit of blockage from the fuel tank. Not much you can do about that. And keeping the 4 zeniths as well. Mounted in a reinforced hull structure to try and keep them protected. The cockpit is perhaps a little bit exposed here, but there's nowhere really else you could have put it except for maybe down where these generators are. Another tough little cookie, a little bit more firepower but a lot less speed compared to Hikura's entry. Another good option potentially. Does have a little bit more range as well, could potentially come out of a garrison a bit further to chase me, although I don't think that's going to be a big component of things, but that's something else to think about. Next up, we have the Stampede from Kipco. There's some cool features in here. First of all, we've got the upgun to 3 D80 Molots. That's a significant amount of firepower. That's a scary actual amount of firepower on a ship this common in the game. We also have 4 Zeniths, and they're really nicely snugged into the hull here. I really like that placement. I like the way that they're protected in little missile silos, meaning they should stay alive long enough to be launched. We do have some downsides though. In order to get it this heavily armored and armed, we've dropped our top speed to 137 kilometers per hour and a thrust to weight ratio of 1.5, meaning this ship will be a lot slower and easier to hit, but hopefully the trade-off on the extra armor and firepower means it'll last a bit longer and do the damage that it needs to do to contribute nicely to the garrison. Only 1 static engine as well and 2 gimbaled engines, it's going to be pretty unmaneuverable in combat. It's basically a floating turret, but it is very, very well armed and armored. Next, we have an adorable baby cruiser from Many-Headed Mishaps. This is the Orthos. It comes packing a insane complement of Zeniths. Not the most we've seen in the campaign, but there are 10 of them here. We also have 4 sprints on this ship and a little bow of Impel as well, with almost full coverage because of how far it is away from the fuel tank. And I really appreciate the commitment to the design here, because it would have been very easy for Mishaps to just push the Vimple a little bit further away from this fuel tank to give it full coverage, but they've kept on to holding the aesthetic and the shape of this. And so instead of doing that, it's actually, they've kind of sacrificed the efficiency of the ship for the aesthetic, and that kind of commitment I really appreciate. We have a radar range of 500 kilometers, a tracking range of 167 with a guidance of 1, so it can launch these sprints, and it has an ELINT of 1050. So it's like a little baby cruiser for each garrison. Bear in mind that these are very, very, very common, so if you want the enemy just to have a whole ton of Zeniths in this armor slot, this is an option for you. Obviously the firepower isn't really there, the armor isn't really there, but the ship itself is really, really cool. I love these designs so much. So that is the Orthos from Many-Headed Mishaps. Speaking of cute ship designs, this is the Margaret from Sloane's. It is another example of Crab Fleet. We have an AK-100 and 2 Vimples, so a slight upgun over the Sarma. We're also managed to fit in the 4 Zeniths that we need, but we've kept a lot of heavy armor here and managed to hold on to a high thrust to weight ratio and speed at just under 300 kilometers per hour and a thrust to weight ratio of 3.3. Actually quite a well-built ship in terms of the compactness of its design, the speed that it can attain, and the amount of armor it has. There are some holes in the armor, but a Sloane Special, the ablative smoke quarters, are there to take the brunt of incoming enemy fire. The crew shouldn't be in their quarters during combat, right? It's not a war crime. Yeah, it's all fine. We also have the nice internal armor here, and we're still keeping that crabby feel that I really, really love with their ships. So that is the Margaret from Sloane's as another option for the Sarma replacement. Our final Sarma entry is the Apu from Tokyo Not Alive, which is just a cute little triple AK-100 ship. Again, massively up armor, 2.7 thrust to weight ratio, 240 kilometers per hour. Looks like it could take quite a beating. We've got some Palash in here as well, which is unique for this class. None of the other entries that I'm aware of had Palash in their designs, giving a little bit more of a lifespan. They obviously had to sacrifice a lot of armor to afford the Palash, but it might just be the difference between life or death. You could cycle up onto the bottom armor while the top armor Palash refreshes itself. Could be a good tactic. Obviously none of the guns are blocked. Very compact design. There's not a lot more I can say about it. Just another solid Sarma. Good luck on your Sarma votes. These are all very, very fun ships. So there's only 2 ships left to review, the Slugger and the Variac. We'll have a look at the Slugger entries really quickly before we get into the meat and potatoes of the Variacs. The Slugger is a ship that the garrisons use as a big gun, basically. The 2 D80 mullets on it pack a real punch and are really nasty against light ships like Lightnings or Audacities. It has basically no armor. It only has the 2 engines. It tends to get stuck in a flip when one of those engines is destroyed. It goes down really, really quickly. It does have the 2 Zeniths. Almost 300 km per hour top speed, 3.1 thrust to rate ratio. It's actually quite fast because it has no armor. It's a weird little ship and is sometimes a little bit more durable than you'd expect it to be. Very low price range. I'm really curious to see what finalists have made it through and what they've been able to do with the budget on this ship. Let's jump in. Big Boats continues their obsession with airplanes with the Slugger CV9 here, which has 2 Zeniths and 2 LA-29 in a very small package. Keeps its high speed even though it doesn't really need it. Just a cute little carrier. That's all there is really to say about it. If you want yet more planes in your garrisons, this is a vote for you. Next we have the Prejudice from Corazon Ray, a very nice little asymmetric design. I love an asymmetric design when it gets pulled off with aplomb, which it has done here. AK-100, 2 Vimples, an LA-29 and 2 Zeniths in what looks to be like a command and control craft for a garrison, keeping that Slugger feel as well of the no armor. It kind of does a little bit of everything. A jack of all trades, not designed for frontline combat, but a lot of these Sluggers do show up a lot. A lot of these just spread around the place, could cause me a lot of problems just with planes coming in from every directions. That's the Prejudice, which I love the name of. Here we have the Cast for Many-Headed Mishaps, which has a very high turret in order to fit a MR12 FCR, sorry, mast I would call this, and an MP21 Elant. So of the Sarmas, this has a 400 km radar range and a 400 km tracking range, as well as a 525 Elant range, which lets it use the 2 KH-15Ps that it's got equipped to it with good effect. Also has an AK-100 for when it gets into combat, still keeps a decent amount of speed, has a lot of range, interesting design, very different, a sort of fast missile carrier, which I like to see. Our last 2 entries for Sluggers are both from TREM. First we have the Agaricus, which is an aircraft carrier mushroom ship. We've got an AK-100 here built around the RD-59 engine, which is their signature for these small ships. Still keeping the 300 km per hour top speed, 3.3 thrust to rate ratio is actually quite fast, and has 2 LA-29. So it's the aircraft carrier mushroom really. I don't really have much more to say. I've said a lot about these designs before. Armor plates where they can fit, but that's really what it's got going for it. And the other TRAM option is the Bisphorus, which has 2 R3 missiles and the AK-100. Drop in top speed at a 242 km per hour, but still pretty fast and maneuverable. Just, do you want planes or do you want missiles with your mushrooms? Because that's your options if you go with a TRAM ship. That's all of the Sluggers. We went through those very, very quickly, but now it is time for Varyag. So before we get into the Varyags, just a couple of words to begin with. For those of you coming into the voting for these ships to fit into my campaign late, who maybe missed, I know it was almost a year ago that we started this journey, the Varyag submissions are a bit special in that I gave everyone an extra amount of budget to build towards with these ships, so they're going to be worth a lot more than the Varyag you see on the ship. And we all know the Varyag from the campaign. It is a scary vessel. It's very well armed, it's very well armored, it's one of the most well designed vanilla ships in the game. It still has flaws. Expect to see people who have taken the Varyag and just trimmed all of the fat off it. These Varyags have, like all the other ships you're seeing in these videos, have already gone through a round of voting. These are the finalists. These are the creme de la creme of the Varyags. Before I reveal them, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has submitted a ship, who has commented on the videos, who has chatted about this on the Discord, and who is voting on these ships today. I really appreciate it. Without you, this campaign wouldn't happen. And I can't communicate to you just how much that means to me. So thank you so much for your time. That's enough for me. Let's have a look at the Varyags. Here we go. Now, those of you from the Discord might be looking at this and think it's a Golden Floof ship, but actually this is the tower from Lineth. This is their entry to the Varyag, which has made it through to the final vote. There is a lot going on here, and I don't want to spend hours looking at the ship, but I think it deserves a decent look. First things first, top speed 114 kilometers per hour. It's pretty fast for a ship this big. Thrust to rate ratio of 1.3. It has a 750 kilometer radar range because of the big radar on top. 400 kilometer tracking range, 4 guidance, and it has a lot of sprints to use that guidance with. Elant 150, IRS-2 300. It has 810 crew. We have banks of sprints here. I think there's 10 on each side. We also have Palash in the hull. I think there's a lot of Palash. I'm not going to count it. There's just so much Palash. We have some really cool design features here. I love the armored module slots for the IRS ones here. I think that looks really, really cool. You can see that we've got double layered hull in places as well down here where the fuel tank is exposed. We have triple layered hull in some sections, double layered hull at the engines here to try and protect them as much as possible. In terms of armament, I honestly don't think I can count it. We've got tons of 180s. We've got Sarmats as well. There's no bigger guns than that. It's all based on the double and the single 180s. Very little in the way of blocked shots, honestly, because it's designed to be shooting left or right. So wherever there are guns, they are able to shoot through the hull. So don't think about the up-down shots. Think about the left and right lateral shooting. It's going to sit on this edge of the battlefield and fire for those directions. We also even have some Zeniths in here. So that is the tower from Lilith. It is a behemoth of a ship. Let's see how it does in combat. Okay, here's Lilith's tower in combat. Here we go with a full barrage. Don't forget that this has layer upon layer upon layer of armor and palash. It's just terrifying. Honestly, this is a real boss. Like, Variac's a scary ship. I don't know how I kill a ship like this, honestly. But if you want maybe a stylish design or something different and you want a tower, I also think this, I believe they did the math when I originally revealed this ship on stream, and this ship is Golden Floof compatible as well, for those of you that know what that means. Yeah, we just killed a Varyag in a couple of seconds and have taken no damage at all. That is Lilith's tower. I'm going to leave it there. Let's check out the rest of the ships that are available to you to vote for. I give you the Liberator from Renzus, a proponent of the philosophy of why bother with elevation when I can just put my guns so far away from the fuel tanks that they don't need to worry about it. This thing is not only armored, but it has multiple layers of a bolt plate of hull, and then air-gapped sections to keep it safe from internal fires. It mounts, I think it's only 6 sprints. It's not as heavily armed as the tower, but I think the survivability here may be of a different question. We've got these huge armored shields that I really love the signs of. We've got more Zeniths built into the hull here as well. I believe that there might be Palash built into the hull too. We'll just check that. Yep, we've got Palash, not as much as the tower, but there's a lot of Palash here too, covering the whole ship. The idea behind this ship though is basically there's absolutely no components that are vital in any of these shields, so they can just take as much damage as you want to give them while the rest of the ship keeps shooting at you. That's the design philosophy behind it. It's massive, it has many legs, which I love, and has many guns. Don't forget that there's Sarmats hidden throughout the hull here, most of them with full area focus on them. And it's just, I almost feel like the ship is just a complete and total flex. Like, you gave me the budget, I can build this ship. It is insanity. Let's have a look at what it does in combat. This is the Liberator from Renzus. I don't know if you're prepared for how big this ship is on screen, but it is pretty big. Let's find a target to shoot at. There's nothing on screen right now. I'm just firing off the wimples. Okay, let's fire at this right here. The convergence is nice. That thing is just wiped off the map pretty much. That's it gone, I think. No, it's still alive somehow. We've actually got a pretty decent amount of speed on this ship here. Let's get into a duel with the Varyag and see how that goes. I'm just giving it everything the ship has. We finally got through the magazine on the Vimples there. We haven't taken any damage at all yet. If you look at the bottom left-hand corner, you can see how the condition of our ship. And now we're being fired out on the other side, which is still perfectly protected by Palash. There goes the Varyag. Another Varyag just spawned. If you want a ship that just dominates the battlefield in terms of its sheer size and scale, this is definitely one for you. The game doesn't like it. It does slow down a little bit when it gets on screen, but you can vote for it if you want. That is the Liberator from Renzus. Thank you so much for this submission. Our next Varyag is the Neris Veliki by Sir Osse. I hope I said that correctly. I can tell, looking at this ship, that it has been so carefully built. A lot of love and time has gone into this design. What I feel they've done is they've taken the blueprint of the Varyag and really tried to just improve it as much as they can while keeping that silhouette and that style. And I think maybe they just had that song playing in the background the whole time they were designing this ship, because it's so close to the Variac but so much better at the same time. We've got a front and back complement of squalls, which should not be underestimated. That's 12 180mm shots front and back. I love these front-mounted KH-15 missiles that are built into the hull here. We have a large component of Palash to protect the hull. We have double-layered hull and then the use of corner pieces to try and protect that for as little as possible. I like to see that extra bit of hustle in there. Can you imagine placing all of these? It would have taken so much time. We've got the jammer built into the hull here as well. I think there's one front and back. No, there's just one at the back. That's all you really need. Tons of zeniths built into the hull as well, so it just peels off those missiles, Macross style. My favorite feature on this ship is the bridge armor facility. This little package that the bridge is built into. I love that. It's just lovely. Even things like the placement of the crew quarters, I think makes sense. It's just been really well thought out. Good use of elevation as well. Armor is well protected. We've got lots of FSS all around the fuel tanks where it needs to be. A very cool, iconic take on the Variac. Not as extreme as some of the other ones we're going to see, but if you like your classics, if you are a man or woman or them of style and panache and you enjoy things the way they're supposed to be, then I present to you Sir Osse's submission. This one isn't quite as game-breaking to get into combat as the last one. Let's give this Bore a full barrage, shall we? And that's why you shouldn't sleep on the Sarmats. This is still a scary ship. I need to get better at using my sprints on incoming missiles when I get into the campaign, because I'm going to be getting missiled a lot, I think. Let's not forget that we can also just launch a million missiles from this ship. That Bore is dead. There's no way it's surviving that barrage. There we go. One more barrage, and then we'll end it. The reload on the Sarmats is nice as well. It's something I've always overlooked. Anyway, that's Sir Osse's submission. Let's have a look at the next one. This is the Lamilla from Sloane's, although in my head it's Peak Crab or Var Crab. What a beautiful ship. It is just the epitome of crab fleet. You know it's crab fleet because look at the crab claws. The fiddler crab claws with one big, one small. I just love it. It's so, again, so much love and time and attention has gone into this design that I am humbled by the amount of work that everybody has put into their ships for this. These Varyags are just next level. Even little things like the curls of the armor here to make it look a little bit more crabby. It's just beautiful. In terms of armament, this ship is insane. We have 2 squalls on each side, almost completely unblocked. If you get below this ship, you have 42 barrels of 180mm pointed at you. We have AK-100s, we have 37mm cannons, all studded around the hull as they should be to provide that anti-missile support. We have a whole ton of sprints mounted on top of the hull where the planes are going to come at it, where the missiles are going to come at it, and these gorgeous little Zenith launch bays pointed downwards under the ship as well in these armored capsules. It's just beautiful. Honestly, it's a work of art. Like so many of the other submissions, don't let me think me gushing over this doesn't mean I haven't gushed over your other ships. I've been pushed for time a lot of the time. All of the ships submitted are absolutely beautiful. This just is something else. Double layered armor as well, triple layered armor in some locations. I think there's Palash in here too. I'd be surprised if there isn't. Yep, we've got Palash in the hull too. Just another beautiful design. Thank you so much for submitting this. I'm really glad, like the Nomads, that I'm not voting on the Varyags, because how could you choose? They're all so good. Let's see what it's like in combat. Now, the only downside is that the AI will not deploy the landing gear, which is now deploying, because of course we need to get those legs out. And now we're going to get a full barrage here because of the angle, but let's see what we can do. Wow. You can almost use the AK-100s as rangefinders to get your angle right before you fire the Sarmats. The structural damage will be the legs getting blown off, which happens to crabs. There you go. Now we've got a full blistering fire shot there. That's a lot of firepower. It's just cruising around here. Really not caring. Fire out. So that's the Lamilla from Sloane's. That's the ultimate crab, the king crab, the Var crab. And our penultimate Varyag entry is the Timeout from Strawman. And Timeout is a very good name for this dragon of a ship. It is pretty gigantic. It mounts, I think, every superior weapon system that the game has to offer. We've got pretty much a full sensor suite on here. We have more Zeniths than I can count very quickly. We're looking at clustered weapons of Squalls and Sarmats. I called them Squalled Sarmats in the last ship, which I apologize for, with 37mm. Those are the primary armaments, 2 weapon pods basically on each side of the ship. If it gets below, then it's in a really great position to deal with that. What I like is the inclusion of the 37mm below the ship, so that if it does get into a situation where a smaller ship is below it with missiles, it can actually shoot those down. And we also have an additional section here with that. It also comes armed with 4 A100 missiles. We have tons of Palash. If you notice here, there's a lot of Palash on this ship. It's probably, and this is a ridiculous thing to say, the least armored Varyag we've seen so far, and still is so heavily armored. It's, again, such a tough nut to crack. I mentioned it previously, but good luck voting for these ships because they are all beautiful and all so well crafted and all terrifying. Let's take it into a quick fight to see how it does. Again, this is the Timeout by Strawman. I'm just going to launch all of our Zeniths at this Varyag and see how they do. I was a bit late launching that. Just a fun ship to fly. Does a lot of work. Those two Varyags appear to have mated. We've got the rate of fire we need on this just to do its work. You can see when the Sarmats reload, they add that extra punch in, but it's just drilling away, and it's just controlling the battlefield very, very nicely. Exactly what you need a Varyag to do, just to be in charge and bully every other ship that's here. You just keep this rate of fire up pretty much constantly and concentrate on shooting everything else that's coming in down. We're now out of sprints. I want to just kill this Varyag. There we go, we got it. And a beautiful ship. That's a Timeout. Let's see what's next. So earlier in this video, you were introduced to their Nomad variant of their ship. Here I give you the Varyag, the 6th Vicar by House Lefay. Again, a ship designed and tested and built to be the most survivable ship that they can design. It's built modularly, so all of the House Lefay ships have a similar look to them because they're built in a modular style. We have 12 AK-100s with full coverage for firepower. That is a lot less than you've seen on other ships, but don't underestimate the AK-100, especially with Prox Fuse or AP rounds. It will just clean through things very quickly. We have 8 37mm cannons on each side. No sprints, no zeniths. It's all about survivability. If you look at the Palash that is scattered throughout this hull, it is so well protected. You've got multiple layers of Palash, then armor, then reinforced hull, then armor, and then another layer of reinforced hull before you get through to the juicy insides of this ship. I can't really emphasize enough how, yes, the firepower isn't as much as the other Varyags you've seen, but don't underestimate the survivability of the House Lefay ships. They are designed to take on a whole battle fleet on their own and just kill everything. They do it slowly, they do it systematically, and they do it with panache. Let's see how our final Varyag does in combat. So this is just the rate of fire on those AK-100s without loading the autoloader. You can just keep this up all day. Not worry about incoming fire, and you can use those 37mm just to destroy any large rounds that are coming at the ship. You can see that we're doing a nice job of drilling through this Bore. We haven't taken, I don't think we haven't taken any fire yet. Never mind any damage. That's the Bore dead. Just dealt with, no problem. Palash isn't even depleted yet. Once you let the autoloaders load, the burst fire potential of this ship is actually pretty terrifying. I'm going to hold down. What we're going to do is we're going to give this Archangel a full burst from the autoloader. Are we ready? Let's go. I missed slightly with that, which is a shame. But we opened a hole in the armor that I can now completely take advantage of. And that Archangel is pretty much dead if you look in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm surprised it's still alive, actually. And that's it gone. So that is your other option. Let's just, yeah. Good luck with your votes, guys and girls and days, because I don't know what I want to vote for. So there you go. I know it's been a pretty long video. I appreciate you sticking around to the end of it if you've done so. Every ship available to vote for has now been demonstrated to you. We have a big job on our hands ahead of us. I ask you humbly to look in the description of the video and place your votes on your favorite ships from these videos. Bear in mind you can jump back to them to check them out. I'm going to try and take the time to timestamp them all if I have the time to do it. It may take a couple of days for the timestamps to come through because I've got a lot going on, but it'll make it easier for you to find your votes. Please get your votes in. I'm going to leave the voting open for I think 2 weeks. just to give it time for the video to get out there. If you know of anyone who's into Highfleet and would be keen on this campaign, please let them know. I'd love for them to get their votes in as well, even if we're coming into it a little bit blind. Let's get as many votes on these as we can. I think it would be really cool to get a really nice cross-section of the Highfleet community into this. And once the votes are in, I'll design my fleet. I might keep it secret, I might not. I'm still deciding on that. And we'll get the campaign started. Yeah, thank you all so much, honestly. The support, the time, the ship designs. I've learned so much on how this game works from watching how you make your ships. And I'm sure you've all learned from each other as well. I've seen that in the Discord, people have been discussing it. I hope everybody is doing great. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao for now.